A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine. Thank you for joining me. Apologies, I had a few people sending me messages. Dan, where are you? What's happened? You're missing. My life is empty and incomplete without you. What happened to Monday's show? Well, I did mention last week, and it was somewhere on social media in a dark recess thereof, I was sitting on multiple aeroplanes making my way back from Belfast via Heathrow on Monday evening. So sadly wasn't able to find a quiet corner of the flight with Wi-Fi connection to sample some wine on board British Airways, which does not have South African wine on its flights from Johannesburg to Heathrow. Most disappointing. There was some very nice Pinot Noir from the States, had a Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, an Italian white from a grape I had not heard of and cannot remember, but it was quite quirky and interesting, and some fairly robust and juicy Victorian Shiraz. It would have been nice to have a South African wine on there. There was some in the lounge on the way back, some Reeboks Kloof Full Stop Red, but a little more wouldn't have gone astray. So nice to be back and nice to be surrounded by South African wine and surrounded by South African food, because that is what I am today. I have got not just three sommeliers, or in one case, a model masquerading as a sommelier, but he knows more about wine than I do, so I have to be polite to him. I have also got three terrific chefs, and the aim today is to have a look at how food and wine come together. We've done something similar over the years, but I thought it was time for an update, particularly because just 2 weeks ago, I sat down for a meal at Salsify, Ryan Cole's fabulous spot at the Roundhouse in Cape Town. It was about 96-course menu with matching wines. It was a Roman feast, and I collapsed into a happy coma afterwards. But it was all paired with wine, and the wine chosen was inventive, it was exciting, it was interesting. I thought, well, let's have a bit of a conversation. And so today we don't just have Salsify, we also have Delaire Graff, one of my favorite spots out in Stellenbosch at the crest of the Banhoek Valley below Botmanskop, and we'll be chatting to chef and sommelier there. And we also head over to Tang, which I think is on a waiting list of about 4 years at the moment, giving Asian food a revival in a very glamorous setting, but also with a fabulous wine list. So all three of those establishments with both chef and sommelier join me on today's show, on which we also announce the winner of our competition for February, who is going to Bartony, 2-night stay at Bartony, plus a case of Hourglass Chardonnay that won 5 stars from the team at Platter. We'll find out in just a moment. First of all, though, some news from the world of wine. And let's kick off with some fabulous, fabulous news. Who is that? Well, look closely. That is Johan Kricher. Now, up until I got the email today, I would have simply said, well, that's Johan from Kanonkop. But he is also Johan from the IWSC. These are the guys who do the International Wine and Spirits Competition. And Johan is the second ever South African to be named as president. This is a global organization, and we have a South African who has been announced as president. It's a wonderful, wonderful accolade for a great man. He's been on the show before, and it means he follows on from the first, and that many, many, many years ago, I think it was about 1996, was the late Antoni Rupert, who was the only other South African to have that presidency back in 96. So well done to Johan. We're going to have him on the show at the end of the month, I think the last week of March, to talk about this, as well as his wonderful brand that is Kanonkop. So well done, Johan. Congratulations. Fabulous news for South Africa. Now, this is really cool news. This is a project that I immediately got excited about, because this is from Delheim and from the Pinotage Youth Development Academy. This is Ulucha Pinotage. And if you're thinking, I've never heard of Ulucha Pinotage, but it's not surprising. It has only just been released. It is brand new wine. It is a Pinotage made by the Pinotage Youth Development Academy, based at Delheim Estate, with whom they are in partnership. And this was released, I think, last week. The students made this wine together, overseen by, amongst others, Siki Biela from Aslina, and Delheim is her home as well. And this is a chance to really get the young winemakers and the Pinotage Youth Development Academy guys stuck in. Only 230 bottles sold, 1,000 rand per bottle. That's expensive, you might think. Well, aside from the fact that I believe it's quite nice wine, I'm having to try some next week, it is also all going to an extremely good cause back in to the Pinotage Youth Development Academy. So only 230 bottles. Try and get your hands on one for a really, really good cause. And we're going to have a couple of the Academy graduates plus Antika plus the team from the Youth Academy on the show. Nikki Munro heads it up. They'll all be on the show next Monday. So look out for that. Then this is Bollinger. Yes, that means there's a wine festival on the horizon, and that's a Bubbles Festival. The first full weekend in April, that's the 9th and the 10th. Darielle Robertson brings her Bubbles Festival up to Johannesburg. Whole pile of Cup Classique. As you can see, loads of Graham Beck there. L'Omoral will be part of it. Bon Courage joining a number of the Robertson providers will be there. A couple of champagne providers like Tattinger are taking part as well. Tickets are now available. It's 2 afternoons. It's a really, really good one to get to. That's Siwela. That's a brand you might not know too well, so you can go and try that as well. Yeah, that is the Bubbles Festival. That's coming up in Johannesburg, the 9th and the 10th of April. And then one last piece of news for you. This is the Social, I need to work with my Afrikaans, the Social Wijnfeest out in Riebekasteel. This is a Swartland getting together for a massive skop, having a party. This is the end of April, the very last weekend, and this is going to be a lot of the top producers who are getting together for this particular event. If you are keen to try it out, you'll obviously need to be in the Swartland for that. It's going to be on the 30th of April, and it's going to be just a really cool party. Mullineux taking part, Leeuwenkuil, Olderak, Riebeck Wine Company, Pulpit Rock, Maras, and there'll be a few from out of town, people like Zevenwacht-Man and Liefland and Journey's End. Anthony Rupert Vayner will be there as well. They've got wines coming out of that part of the world. So that's one to look out for if you happen to be in the Swartland. So there you go. Those are some pieces of news from the world of wine. Put in your diary or to celebrate. Right, before we say hello to our guests for today, let's have a look at that competition. Now, what a competition it was. It was a chance to win a 2-night stay at Bartony, plus a case of wine from the estate, not just any wine, but their Hourglass Chardonnay, 5 stars from John Platter. And we have our winner. Now, here we go. Congratulations to, have we got the name up on screen? Esmeralda September. I would love to win this treat, to spend time with my loved ones, said Esmeralda, and they gave us some really good reasons for heading out to Bartony. So Esmeralda will contact you with the details, but congratulations, new competition up and running. It's a prize this time from Bellingham, the team at DGB for the month of March, their new masterpiece range with Pick and Pay doing very well indeed. Look out for that competition, and a cool prize can be coming your way as well. Speaking of cool, let's meet our guests for today as we talk food and wine. It's a space I'm very passionate about myself at home. It normally ends with a fire extinguisher and a call to Mr. Delivery. It doesn't stop me from experimenting, but those far better at such experimentation are our 6 guests today. Joining me from Delaire Graff, Chef Kayla, whose food I've had on many occasions, as well as Rene, who is sommelier at the moment up at Indochine. The chiseled figures of Ryan Cole and Sam Ross, fresh out of the gym and ready to talk food and wine. And Nikki van der Walt and Vixa Kalanga from Tang. Vixa does all the food, makes all the magic. Nikki walks around with his shirt half undone, making people breathe and gasp deeply as they complete the Tang experience. Guys, welcome to all of you. Lovely to have you on the show. And Ryan, Sam, thank you guys for inspiring this show, because you had me round at Salsify, a couple of weeks ago now. I didn't look at the menu properly, and I thought, oh yes, Jem, that sounds fine. I didn't realize that, Ryan, it was every single dish you'd ever made in your life ever on one menu, and then Sam throwing in every bottle of wine you could find in the cellar. It was an extraordinary feast, but it was so much fun. Before we talk a bit in detail, Ryan and Sam, about the menu, about how the wine comes together, just talk about the food in particular, Ryan, because I have to say, and not just because you're on the show, it's one of the finer meals I've had in some time in Cape Town. It was a really lovely combination of excitement, fresh flavors, not trying to do too much, but bringing out the best of everything you did. You seem to be in a really good space, and that menu showing the best of what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, we're in a good space. The industry's bounced back. We're cooking food that we really believe in at the moment, and it's like we're almost back to that sort of that emotional spirit of the world before COVID, and it shows. We're not holding back. We're using truffles. We're using langoustine. There's luxury. There's a sort of feeling of celebration in the air, and that's sort of where this whole journey started with the gem pairing.
It's a gem pairing that features terrific food. It also features terrific wine. Ryan, when you're creating this for you as a chef, is it simply, this is what I want to make, and then it's up to Sam to sort himself out and find some decent wine? Or is there an element of collaboration, of talking through the dishes and getting feedback from Samuel in terms of what might work, what I've got in the cellar, what sort of dishes might really do justice to a particular wine? How collaborative is it? Or is this just simply the Vladimir Putin of the kitchen and what Ryan says goes?
No, I mean, I think Sam would beg to differ, but I think it's definitely a case of sort of, Sam, this is what I'm thinking, this is where we are, this is what we've come up with, and now sort of try and catch me if you can. And he's got absolutely no sort of like boundaries. So if he wants to put on whatever he wants, he can. So it's a sort of like I'll raise the bar if you raise the bar sort of relationship, isn't it, Sam?
True. And Dan, this often happens 5 minutes before a new dish comes out. So I need to get a pairing before that. So yeah, chef doesn't give me a lot of time, but it's really fun. It keeps me on my toes as well. And we definitely bounce off ideas. Well, 2 heads is better than one. In this case, 2 pallets is better than one. We normally get another third or fourth person in, just to get a holistic view. Yeah.
And quite often what we'll do is Sam will bring three sort of like the Ferrari, the Mercedes, and the Volkswagen into the equation, and then we'll sort of say, well, what is our intention? Do we want to blow somebody out the water, or who's the star of the show? Is it your round or my round? And that's sort of the starting point of the conversation.
As a quick aside, I'm watching Samuel just to see what he looks like, because he's only ever worn a mask when we've interacted at Salsify. What about that balance? Because for me, that is the art of food and wine, is not having one completely overpower the other, which is very easy to do depending on the food or the wine. So how do you approach it, Samuel? And what for you is the key in terms of trying to get it not just right, because you never will, everyone's palate is different, but in the right sort of ballpark?
Glad you asked me that question, Dan. It's actually very simple. And Ryan's dishes is very, very clean, very simple as well, but very clean. And that makes the wine shine a lot more than punchy big flavors. So the chef plays such a big part. His food is very, very, very clean, and that just makes the wine pops up. So it's very easy at the end, actually.
But also, we've been working together for 2 years. So, I mean, in the beginning, we'd sort of have that you'd be trying to match the food.
True.
Whereas now it's sort of a symbiotic relationship where it's a give and take relationship.
Very true. I came from a different restaurant where it was big, bold, powerful flavors. And for our main course, I remember putting on a bigger, bolder style Stellenbosch Cabernet. And when I tasted Ryan's main course, I think it was a Springbok at the time. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm overpowering this beautiful, elegant dish with very beautiful flavors. So I had to take a step back and go with more lean, not leaner, but more fresher, more cleaner style of wines to actually match it as well. Yeah, so that was a bit of an eye-opening experience for me.
I want to talk about some of these pairings in just a moment, because the menu was terrific, and we'll do that in more detail. Let's head over to Stellenbosch, though, and to our chef-sommelier combination. Kayla, is it a little different for you? Ryan, it's restaurant, and then the wine supplements it. But you're on a wine estate. Delaire Graff is known for making some splendid wine. Does that then alter how you approach the food and wine space?
Yeah, so I think because we are a wine estate and we produce so much wine, a lot of our pairing is done around the wine, so the food needs to match it. It's 50-50, I obviously cook and the sommeliers will bring the wines and we'll taste everything and see what works. But also I think terroir orientated. So a lot of what we're using on the plate is from the area, so it's not that difficult to pair it with the wine. Like what comes to mind is all the fruit that grows, the plums and that kind of thing in our valley. And those really need some big wines to go with them. So from a terroir point of view, everything pairs pretty easily.
What about the challenge for you as a chef? Because you come from a slightly different part of the world. It's leaving KwaZulu-Natal, saying hello to the winelands. How much of a challenge, how much fun has it been adapting to a slightly different culinary world?
Yeah, so it's been quite cool. There's obviously a lot of inspiration around. We used to do 1 or 2 trips a year to the Cape and just eat. Now I can do that every weekend or, every day off. And also obviously different clientele, but I also entered the Cape in a very strange stage. It was post first lockdown. We opened up with no liquor sales. So it was different. There were no tourists, there were no foreigners, which Delaire has always, been predominantly foreign trade. So it was very interesting trying to balance everything.
You have the food side of it mastered, and I know this because I was there not that long ago. The challenge for your sommelier is to bring out the very best of the wine while also celebrating that food. Renee, when you are a sommelier at a wine estate, there's obviously a certain level of expectation. How do you approach the food and wine matching, particularly because with Indochine, you've got a very particular style of food?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit different. It can be an advantage to be on a wine estate because we know our own wines so well. So as soon as we taste the dish from the chef, we can immediately go with, say, one of our own Delaire Graff wines. But at Indochine specifically, a little bit different with the Afro-Asian cuisine that we've got. So it's not always possible to go with our own wines. Quite different in style with the cuisine. So there, it's pushing the boundaries a little bit. I think much of like what Samuel and Ryan were saying applies to Indochine as well.
Is it for you as much a conversation with Mornay, the winemaker, as it would be with Kaylin, with the team in the kitchen, in terms of understanding the wine, so you can try and get that just right? We've lost Renee there for a moment. We'll get back to her in just a second because Indochine has got such a terrific menu, but pairing it with wine, Asian food can be a challenge. It's a challenge that is laughed at by the team at Tang in Sandton, which has proved enormously popular. Nikki and Victor, welcome to the show. We've spent a few times filming down at Tang, and it's always a fascinating space. I remember early visits to places like Hakkasan, where you're a wine lover, but the range of flavors, you're having 15 different dishes in small plates over the space of an hour or two. How do you find a wine that's going to somehow pair off each? I know you created the wine list, Nikki. Before we jump into the food with Vic, so what was the thinking when you sat down and thought, right, we've got to have wine in the restaurant. You love wine. How do we put together something that's going to sort out this array of different flavors that we dish up?
Firstly, thank you for having us on the show. It's always an honor, Dan. Chef and I worked for 2 years on the menu, and yes, Asian food is interesting. I wouldn't say difficult, but it's an interesting style of cuisine to pair with wine. But what I set out to do is, instead of going dish by dish, I think Chef and I had an idea to create this journey. And it is small plates where we hit you with a lot of flavor, and then we bring you back down. So there's big, bold flavors. There's a lot of acid and whatever else. So, the traditional, I set out to do a wine list that I liked, irrespective of the cuisine, which made life easy. And then we added where we felt we were short. I'm more skewed towards the red Bordeaux side of things, and that's not necessarily the right wine for our type of cuisine. However, a big feature on our menu is Wagyu done on the robata cuts. So we can get away with that. And it's true what you said. I was thinking about it on the way here. When we try and recommend a wine to someone, where do you go? And, the word you said earlier on is balance. So I think what we try to do first is the other way around. We see what people order to drink, and then we'll suggest food accordingly. It's a bit of an other way that we do it. But I think, the go-to for us, not to think the go-to, but, when I did the wine list, I wanted to not have a little bit of something for everybody, but there is something for everybody, but our menu has something for everybody. So it's not just, it is Asian, but not all just big flavors. So there are easy pairable dishes, and then there are ones that are not so easy pairable. So we often so especially Johannesburg market, slightly different. People love their wine, but they're not as specific, I would say, as in Cape Town. So let them order their wine, and then we'll go and order suggest dishes around that.
Vic, so you've got a lot of that Cape Town experience, bit of Asian experience, but more of a Japanese focus when you were at Willoughby's. Before I ask you a wine question, tell me about the food challenge for you as a chef, because it takes 6 people to lift up the menu at Tang. It is such a pan-Asian mix. And in other parts of the world, Asian is kind of a big, broad term. But when you actually visit the Southeast Asian world, you discover that cuisine is so different based on which country, which region, sometimes just which city you're going to. There are so many different types, so many different interpretations. How much of a challenge is it for you as a chef to be able to dip into all of these different culinary cultures and create this huge menu that reflects such a broad cultural and culinary space?
So then, thanks a lot as well. Actually, it takes up 6 people indeed, and Nikki's a 6. I'm the 7th. He actually inspired me a lot with a lot of information that I need to know, and a lot of books that I needed to read. And of course, my experience at Willoughby was a huge experience for me, and I learned a lot from there. And with Nikki helping me with information, that helped me actually put the whole menu to the actual easy way, because you understand the wine very well, and to make sure that the food pair perfectly with our guest here.
Which leads to a question on wine, and Nikki's answered it to a degree, but I'm interested in your perspective as you create this pan-Asian menu with all of these different flavors. Where are you headed as a chef in your head in terms of the kind of wine that people should be looking at when they are arriving at an Asian restaurant like yours with all these different flavors? There's probably not one wine that fits all, but where are the kind of spaces you might be looking at wine-wise?
Yeah, one sommelier pretty much, yeah.
So, I mean, just to answer for a chef so when majority I'll go to wine that we would suggest, and dishes that we have created pair very well with our whites. Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling is a very, very great pairing, and Chenin Blanc. So the dishes that I'll sort of take the wines to chef, and he'll taste it and then come up with different dishes for us.
If you haven't been to Tang, you do need to get there, because you should probably need several visits. I've only got through about a 10th of the menu on my visits so far. But that's obviously the delight of being able to go to somewhere like Tang. You've got all these different tastes, and that's exactly what the menu does at Salsify through this gem menu. You've got so many different dishes. Ryan, it is an enormous range, and so it offers up so many different flavors for you to experiment with. One of the things I really enjoyed about Salsify, there were a lot of great little touches, but the information that was conveyed by your team. You've got your own fishing boat that's going out, it's catching fresh fish. We were told where ingredients were coming from. There's a great freshness to the menu, and that seems to reflect your philosophy on how you're putting together the food at Salsify.
Yeah, the thing we stand for most intrinsically is really sustainability, and our story is where we are, and so that rings true to the whole menu. So from the time you sit down, the fact that you've got a Korean inspired street snacks like the sam, which we get the shiso from a farm in Hawaii named Ming at Muse Farms, and then the yellowtail that was served on that night had been caught just off of False Bay on Statiki, which is our family-owned commercial fishing boat, and it's a little 5-man boat where there's 5 men all fishing with lines on the boat, and whatever bites they catch, if nothing bites, they don't catch. So everything through that, and then later on in the menu, you've got the kapokpos, which is this wild rosemary cured lamb rib, lamb belly, and the kapokpos is picked just on the foot of the mountain, probably about 300 meters away from where we are. So for me, it's a very, very big thing to sort of bring everything back to where we are and make it applicable to a time and a place, and to tell the story of you're sitting here now and do you know what's around you. So for me, that's a big part of it. So also when Sam and I were looking at the gem menu, we really wanted to put on a vintage champagne, and we were like, should we do it? We're like, yeah, that's really exciting, but like, do we want to do it? And we sort of landed in the place where, no, we don't want to do like a sort of champagne, because this is a sort of like a tribute to South Africa in a sense, isn't it? It's like, that's what we stand for as a restaurant, is sustainability at our core. And what that means for us is keeping things as sort of close to home as possible, and telling our story, which is a time and a place.
But just been having a look at some of the photos while you talk of my meal. I'm now feeling rather famished. And what I'm reminded by, I didn't really need reminding, but Samuel, the wine that you came up with, I was expecting really good wine. I was expecting wine that I recognized, and it did tick both of those boxes. But it wasn't the wine that I expected. I think we kicked off after some vintage bubbles out of Robertson that Ryan's just referred to. You had some vintage Pinot Noir, a grape we generally drink far too young in South Africa. I think it was some Radford Dale, about 10 years old. You had some Seine that you'd dug up from a corner somewhere, not a wine we find a huge amount of. What is your wine process in terms of gathering these wines and having a selection available that is both fabulous but also so unexpected?
Dan, so I always go for wines that people that I can't always find. So people can't just walk into a shop generally and find, because you want to go to a restaurant, especially to a fine dining establishment like ours, and buy a wine that you can't get tomorrow or the next day, or go into a big supermarket and find it there. So it has to be special. It has to be something that you go like, wow, where did, like exactly the question that you just asked, where did you get it from?
How did you get it?
Exactly,
how have you thought of this?
Yeah. So also, wines that I want to drink myself as well. Going back to the Gentleman at Tang as well. Just wines that I want to pour into my glass and actually drink it as well. But more important than that is the food that makes me, or that inspires me and makes me want to go out and get these different wines as well.
And that's why it's a gem, because it's not necessarily the price point, but it's the sort of the rarity of that bottle of wine that makes it special. It's not always the most expensive bottle of wine, but it's like the one that we go in like, how, like, Sam, we can only find 4 of these, let's buy it. And that's sort of what we base our list off of. Which can be a good thing and a bad thing, Dan, because sometimes we have like 2 cases of this wine and then it's gone. We don't see it again. And then another 3 cases of another one, and so it's a good thing and a bad thing in a way as well.
It reminds me of our friend Saki, who tends to bring out bottles of wine. He's got no idea about wine, but he'll bring out a 2007 bottle of Villafonte. So I found this. Is this any good? Except yours is a bit more deliberate in terms of the stuff you brought out. And you also brought out this, which I'm drinking some of now. If you can see it down the glare, that's the 2009 FMC. Actually, Sam, I had Ken Forrester phone me the next morning. Where on earth did they get a Magnum of my 2009? Even I don't have any. So yeah, Ken Forrester jealous of his wine.
Sorry, Dan, he actually leased Magnums for us only. So I think we're the only restaurant with Magnums of the 09. They don't make it in Magnums.
Sam, don't tell them.
Sorry. Sorry.
All right, let's head back out to the winelands. I think we've got Rene back there. Rene, for you as a sommelier, I said it in jest at the top of the show, but I'm genuinely interested. Are there dishes for you as a sommelier where Kayla's said, oh, we've got this on the menu, word comes through from the kitchen, chef's changed this around, and you think, oh no, how on earth am I going to pair wine with this?
To be honest, I think it happens on a daily basis. Specifically, Sam touched on it, where it's a lot of it happens last minute. It's maybe just before dinner service starts, and the dish changed a little bit, and you have to adapt. But I do love that because that keeps us on our toes. It's that constant learning curve and challenging each other. Yeah, I think it's the way of the sommelier chef, how it works.
I think that the flip side to that, though, is that it forces you into a creative space as a sommelier, and you're like, all right, I've got to work something, and quite often you'll find something that works surprisingly well, or at least isn't quite as bad as you thought it might be. What for you has been a discovery, particularly in Indochine, for dishes that are produced, where you've brought something together, possibly with fingers a little crossed, and you've seen a smile of delight on a customer, or you've tried it yourself and gone, you know what, this is actually a really good match?
So we just launched our brand new menu of the Japan menu, so all Japanese cuisine. And 2 sleepless nights later, I finally got a wine pairing. But that was last night was the face of the people, of the guests, trying the wine pairing for the first time. And it's all white wines. Unfortunately, you can't really find a lot of red wines to work with this menu. And firstly, to get the guests to understand that, and then tasting what they've never had a Pinot Gris before. They're not fans of Riesling, but it works well with the dish. So it's a lot of that opening their mind to trying these cultivars that they definitely wouldn't buy in the shop, that's for sure. And discovering, like you touched on, Sam's menu having Seine on the menu. That was on my previous pairing menu as well in February month. And that for me was a wow. It worked really well with the dish.
The journey of discovery that is food and wine, and it's not limited to those of us who arrive at these fabulous restaurants. I think it's even the chefs themselves. Is that a fair observation, Kayla, that even somebody with your experience, with your journey in food and by extension wine, sometimes you'll bring together a dish with a glass of wine, and on their own they're both pretty good, but together just something magical happens?
Yeah, I think so. I think, if the wine can bring out the food and the food can bring out the wine, you've done your job. Sometimes the pairings are horrendous and you think, why did I think that would ever work? But I think the one thing I've learned is that you actually have to taste it. You can't assume you know what you're doing, you know how it's going to pair. You need to taste it. And sometimes it works so well, the most unexpected, and sometimes the most expected are terrible together.
And speaking of expectation, you go around to somebody's house for dinner, they'll have some seafood, and they'll open a bottle of white wine, probably Sauvignon Blanc that's been made 4 hours previously, and then there'll be some red meat, and there'll be a big bottle of red, and that is often the extent of the sense of adventure. What annoys you most as a chef in terms of our preconceptions of pairing food and wine, and what should we be doing more of to just be more adventurous and to get a bit more out of the possibilities?
So I'm the wrong person to ask because I drink a lot of red. So if there's seafood, I'm probably going to drink red with it anyway. But I think it's really difficult when people are very stuck in their ways about what should pair. I think people should just taste a little bit and experiment a little bit. It's not to say white wine, Sauvignon Blanc, and seafood. It doesn't have to be like that, And I think if people just open up their minds a little bit, they'll probably find there's a lot of things that pair with seafood.
My wife refuses to drink white wine. She's a barbarian. She won't drink Pinot Noir either. It's big reds and big reds only, but she'll quite happily have seafood and red wine. And if you like it, that's absolutely fine. I suspect as I head back to Sandton, Mr. van der Walt, that's something you've picked up in your many years in the restaurant industry, that sense of adventure. You've produced your own wine. You've done a lot of wine tasting. You've had many restaurants and establishments. The world, I'd like to think, is opening up a bit more and is being a little bit more liberal in its understanding of what can go together and how we can play around a bit more with food and wine.
I'm a creature of habit. I eat the same thing every day almost, and I drink the same thing. And I think my eyes opened up a few years ago when I went to La Colombe, And as opposed to just going with the normal, picking one wine and going through, I actually opened up my mind and I said, let's actually do a wine pairing. And it was quite amazing to me how much the wine complemented the food, you know. And there's something that you said earlier on, which is amazing. It's the balance, you know. And I think the art is finding that balance, and people should strive to try different wines to complement their food, but also food to complement the wine. It works both ways. But having said that, the one thing that I find, and I think you and I spoke about my rosé, and how rosé, you know, for me was an afterthought. You know, a varietal for me that's very overlooked in this country, and that I'm trying to pioneer a lot more of on our wine list, because it goes very well with our food, is Riesling, South African Riesling. It's a very overlooked varietal, and you know, with great confidence, if I'm asked for a pairing that goes well with almost all of our dishes, it would be a Spion Corp Riesling or a Hartenberg Riesling. And I just think people should not have this preconceived idea that Riesling is like the sweet stuff that we had in the 1970s when KW was the only people making it. There are some great winemakers out there doing some amazing stuff. And interestingly enough, that's Jancis Robinson's favorite wine, which she concurs pairs very well with most foods.
It's interesting you mentioned that. One of the wines on the list at Salsify a couple of weeks ago was some Paul Kluwer Riesling from just up the road from the Mad Belgian at Speenkop. It is a terrific, terrific food wine. Don't be put off by those fumes of diesel and turpentine as you take in the nose. It works really, really well. Victor, for you as a chef, what would you like to see people doing more with wine to get the best out of their food? What are we doing wrong? What are we not doing enough of as wine drinkers when we're ordering our food?
I think for me, to be honest, would be like experimenting. And one thing that we start doing at Tang, which is one of the segments that we do, I actually enjoy that, the front of house, to kind of suggest new wine to go with it, Japanese food, like Nikki said. Which is
not an easy task.
Not an easy task, exactly. So, like, pretty much a lot of experimenting, trying something new, because our Japanese food and Cantonese restaurant, pretty much, there's a lot of both flavors. So, if you don't experiment, then it's a be another story.
But Victor, give me an answer, straight answer, hand on heart, honestly. Is there a wine I can drink with a mouthful of wasabi?
To be honest, I don't think so. That's a straight up.
Mirabelle. You can drink Mirabelle.
Yeah,
Mirabelle.
Oh dear, that of course is the rosé that Nikki has produced from the Swartland that has appeared on a previous show. Don't take my word for it. Michael Fridjon said it was lovely, and I think he baths in the stuff once a week, so it's clearly struck a particular chord. Rosé also quite big at Delaire Graff, and I know Tendai, René's predecessor, was a big fan of the Cabernet Franc rosé that is put together. Given you've got the wine estate, given that in Mornay you've got such a great winemaker and you're in a beautiful part of winemaking, South Africa, how much do you liaise, Kayla, with both Mornay and with the broader team at Delaire Graff when you're sitting down, right, winter's coming up, let's look at a winter menu, but what is that winter menu going to be to bring out the very best of the wine that we have for this particular time of year, which as a red wine drinker, I suspect would be one you're extra excited about.
So Mornay is the best person to taste food and wine with. You just know that if you invite him to a wine and food pairing, you're going to be there for the next 4 hours and the vintages come out and we just end up making plates after plates of things, and he mixes things and he changes the plates around. But he is one of the best people to taste food and wine with. His palate is amazing. He loves food. I mean, he really, his pairing, the way he pairs is just incredible. And he can like remember what he ate 17 courses ago and say, no, that's going to work with this wine. So I spend a lot of time with him. And then, you know, it's in the broader scale of like the wine sales and the wine marketing and everything kind of fits in. You know, we do dishes for the wine marketing. And so, yeah, everything's worked pretty closely together. Even like I spend quite a lot of time walking around the farm and just having a look at the grapes. And I've been around in the cellar with harvest. And yeah, so it's been really like very cool to see the whole process of the wine being made, the previous vintages being bottled, all those sort of things.
I'm going to come back to you in a moment because you talk so fondly of those food and wine pairings. I want to find out from you. From Renee, if we get her back, I think she's dropped out for a moment. And then also from our team at Tang about their all-time food and wine favourite pairings, both where you are now and what have gone before. Let's go back down to the roundhouse, though, and our crack team at Salsify with that food and wine coming together. A similar question to the one I put to Victor. Samuel, are there times when you know what people have ordered to eat and then they order wine and you've got to smile politely and inside you are weeping because you know this is just fundamentally not right? Where do we get things wrong? What should people do more of to maximize their food and wine experience?
Yeah, I think you said it earlier, Dan. I think the wine you have, if you love the wine, it doesn't matter if it's big or red, it doesn't matter if it pairs or doesn't pair. If you enjoy the wine, it's the best wine on earth at that stage. But I think in South Africa, I'll contradict myself. In South Africa, I think we used to having big, bold, powerful style of wines, and the reason for that is because we do have a lot of sun. But try more elegant wines, more fresher style wines, and wines with a little bit more acidity, which are a little bit more lighter and more leaner as well. Those are generally food friendlier wines. Try wines with a little bit less alcohol as well. Those are generally food friendlier wines. Those are ones that I can drink. If you have less alcohol wines, 11.5, 12% wine, you can easily polish 2 bottles and not just 1 bottle and feel it. So my advice would definitely be try for much more fresher, much more cleaner. Also lesser alcohol wines, but it all depends on what you're having, and it all depends on what you like and what you want at that particular moment as well.
I'm immediately reminded of Chris Alheit's wonderful Nautical Dawn that sits on your gem menu at the moment. He is a master, and it was a wonderful touch, great addition to that menu. We often talk about what wine would go really well with food. Ryan, do you have moments where you are poured a glass of wine and you have a taste of it and you go, oh my goodness, this would go so well with frog's legs and lemongrass and a hint of salted caramel. I must rush off and make it. Do you get that sort of inspiration as a chef from particular wines?
I'm afraid the answer is no. Well, I was actually chatting to Sam about it as well. They, in Cape Town, we have a restaurant called Aubergine with the chef's name is Harold. They've been there for 25 years. And I say to Sam quite often that, I really wish I was sort of like driven like he is, the way like Harold has got this beautiful ability to taste the wine and then say, you know what, this is what we should make to match that. But I'm a bit more selfish is the word, where for me it's I lead with my stomach and then with my tongue, So for me it's all about like, what do I want to eat, and then what are we going to drink? So yeah. Sadly, the honest answer is not really.
All right, we appreciate the candor. I'm going to ask you guys in a moment the question I said I'd ask the other guys, which is your favorite food and wine pairings. But just a quick one, Samuel, to people at home. We talk a lot about eating out, but most of our meals are at home, and we'll often pull out a glass of something that's friendly and easy drinking to get us through a midweek dip, or to pair with something simple we've made at home, throwing together a bolognese or warmed up a ready cooked meal. Are there any basic tips from sommelier Samuel for the home sommelier, and ensuring that whether it's just that midweek dinner or you're making food for friends that are coming around for a meal, something to look at to perhaps improve the experience for everyone who's coming around?
Cool, Dan. So just to touch on the bolognese experience, funny because I was looking for wine to match bolognese in South Africa for a long time, and because I love pasta, as you can see, and to me, wine that actually works for anyone making bolognese tonight or tomorrow night or in the week, whenever. Start the Steenberg Nebbiolo. It's got this beautiful tomato notes on it, which I really like. So that for me would be definitely a beautiful match. It's also got acidity, which will cut through the richness of the bolognese itself as well. And it also matches the weight of the dish very, very well. But again, as long as you're drinking wine, I'm happy. Crack up anything, South Africa's making magnificent Chenin's at the moment. So drink beautiful Chenin if you can. Lighter red Cinsault. I think the weather's perfect for your Cinsaults. Your lighter style of Shiraz is from cooler regions as well. So yeah, those are definitely my go-to wines at the moment. Wines that I can sit at home and actually open a bottle of and drink.
And also, but what are your 2 rules though? If we're going to cook something for dinner tonight, there's always 2 things we talk about. It's a marriage pairing and a contrast.
And a contrast,
so
right.
what are the 2 rules?
Definitely.
This is the secret.
Yeah.
For like any aspiring home sommelier, home cook, any foodie winer.
True. So contrast is a little bit more difficult. There's a lot of ways you can go wrong with contrasting. But a classic pairing for contrast would be your blue cheese and your dessert wine. Basically, that's a sweet and salty contrast. Balanced pairing is a little bit more easier, definitely. And so that would be definitely like your red wine with your red meat, a little bit more balanced pairings as well. But yeah, just open whatever you want to open and enjoy it. Yeah, there's no rules. There's no rules. Yeah.
We bring an award-winning chef and a star sommelier onto the show and get them to talk about pairing bolognese. Next week, it's David Higgs and Vickers Human talking fish fingers and Chardonnay. I'm going to get your favourites in just a second, guys. Let's head back to Kayla. Kayla, your time up in KwaZulu-Natal, now your team at Delaire Graff. Give us, if you will, 2, one off your current menu and then one going back to the different places you've called home in the kitchen. 2 fabulous food and wine pairings that for any particular reason just really stick in the mind.
So we had a chef's table, we had a chicken oyster dish, and it was with a wooded Chardonnay, so with chicken jus and mushrooms and a mushroom tortellini with the harvested chicken oysters, which were so much work. But that was an amazing, amazing pairing. I loved it. And that dish has kind of just gone with me wherever I've gone. And then at Delaire at the moment, we have this amazing Karoo lamb, and it's with the Botmaskop. I love the Botmaskop. It's such a delicious, delicious wine. It doesn't matter which vintage you open. It's just delicious, and it works so well with the lamb.
Interesting you mention that, because one of the other wines I'm sampling this evening just happens to be the Botmaskop. It really is one of my go-to reds. I think, I know you've got stuff that's a bit higher up the price range, but I think your Botmaskop is really hard to beat, and I think it's Mornay's signature. I'm not sure if he agrees, but I shall say that nonetheless. I think we've got Renee back. She has added 2 more Penlight batteries to her router. And I think we've got it back. Renee, if you are there, just the same question to you. 1 or 2 food and wine pairings that stick in the mind over the course of your sommeliering career.
So that's actually a tough one. So many stood out, but specifically for me at Indochine now, because I'm new at Indochine, so working with this cuisine is quite new to me with the Afro-Asian style. But just lots of that. Sam was also talking about, about the Rieslings and things. I personally love South African style Rieslings, and it doesn't get enough limelight. So recently used Hartenberg's occasional Riesling on our pairing menu, which works quite well with most of the dishes. But then we were also talking about tips for pairing. So for me, we have a dish. It's all about the duck dish, which a lot of people would go Pinot Noir, anything like that. But this dish completely destroyed all my wines because it was all about the sauce. So chef had a red curry sauce on the dish. The only wine I tasted through 5 different wines. Unfortunately, no Delaire Graff wines work, not even the Botmaskop, which I do love. I had to go Rainbow's End Merlot, a bit of an older vintage. So what I love about that older vintages is just the beautiful body that it brings to the wine. So just with that pairing, I think will always stick with me because it was such a challenge, just with the sauce. Thank you, chef.
I love that. That's 2 really cool points there. One being vintage, and in terms of a pairing, it's something that the guys at Salsify did so nicely, going back 10 years and more with a number of wines, and it completely changes the wine. It also completely changes the food and wine experience. And then the often forgotten, much maligned Merlot, which has the ability to both stand up to, but also slip back into the background of a dish, depending on what it is and how it works together. Some great combinations there. I see Grant Sauls is watching on YouTube at the moment. I love curry and Riesling pairing, especially JJ Plum Well, there you go. I think Mr. Madavolt might enjoy that as a Riesling fan. Skulk Stapelberg, awesome guests. Cheers, guys. Skulk, good to have you back on the show. Skulk, don't miss next Monday's show. I know you're a Pinotage fan. We have the Pinotage Youth Development Academy and their brand new Pinotage as we talk to them down at Delheim. Oh, let's head over to Nicky, who's probably licking his lips at that curry and Riesling pairing, and to Vic. So, Nicky, from your many years in the world of food and wine, a couple of pairings, perhaps one at Tang and one elsewhere that you remember with great fondness?
I mean, it's not a cliche. I mean, for us, when we researched our menu and obviously what would be great pairings, Peking duck is our star of the show, one of, but I mean, And ironically enough, I understand, I heard what I think Renee said, but the Pinot Noir for us, it's like cupcakes and icing. The two go so well, and we've got a beautiful vertical selection on our wine list. And I mean, it's special. But a pairing that stands out, actually, when thinking about it now, I was very fortunate in 2005 or 2004. I was invited by Merton Chandon to go to the Chateau in Epinay, and it was unbelievable. We had a 1 or 2 star Michelin chef that is resident in the Chateau, cooked for us, and it was an amazing meal. Meal after meal was amazing. But at the end, we had a carrot cake, and I thought, carrot cake. I mean, but he paired it with a 1983 vintage Merton Chandon, and that pairing stood out in my head, not because, for whatever reason, it was the vintage. It was, you had all those. Sorry, there's someone going to my office. All those beautiful flavors from the vintage champagne coming through, and that stood out in my head. Still does. Chef, you?
Yeah. Just to add on, Nicky, I'll tell you a story about the Peking duck story. So, the Pinotage always stood up for us a lot, because when we were doing the menu testing, I was doing the Peking duck. And it was such a struggle to get it right, because we wanted to get a crispy skin. And Nicky and I had traveled all over the place just to get a pump in. And the moment he had paired that Peking duck with Pinot Noir, it was just, I could just see his face. Then I knew that's it. The recipe is perfect. Everything is amazing. So pretty much, I think the Peking duck.
Can I tell them the story about that?
Yeah, good.
So we had a test kitchen of one of our kitchen manufacturers in Cleveland in Johannesburg, and the Peking duck, you've got to separate the skin, you've got to blow it up, and we didn't have a compressor or anything like that. So Chef and I jumped in a car and went to a Shell Ultra City with a duck, and this duck still had their head on, and we parked at the Shell Ultra City, and I jumped out with the duck and took the tire inflator, and there were 3 taxis with 20 people in each staring at us with this bloody duck and bumping it up and separating the skin. So not necessarily to do with the pairing, but a good memory.
That is a fantastic story. Rocking up at your local petrol station. Can you please inflate my duck for me? Oh dear. And well, it sounds wonderful with that Pinot Noir. There's a restaurant in Central in Hong Kong, which I love so much. Once had a connecting flight. I think I was heading back from Shanghai, and I had a 7-hour layover, left my bags at the airport, took the train into Central, had an entire Peking duck and a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, got back on the train and flew back home. It was a wonderful experience. And that carrot cake and champagne as well. There's just so much excitement to be had with food and wine. We are sadly almost at the end of our hour, so let's dash very quickly back to the Roundhouse and to Salsify. Samuel, Chef Ryan, a dish or two from each of you where the pairing has just been magnificent.
Perfect. I'll go first. Is that fine? Is that fine with you?
Of course you will. No, you take it. It's your show. It's your show.
So Dan, actually what got me thinking about this whole food and wine pairing thing, what got me into wine was Kolani, a friend of mine, or someone that I used to look up to, or I still look up to. And he used to be a sommelier. And we went to a tasting. It was a Chardonnay tasting. After the tasting, there was a bottle left on the table. We took a Lismore Chardonnay, and he took us to Baristas, which is literally just on the corner from the Vineyard Hotel, and we had a steak. And I had this Chardonnay with a piece of steak, and it was probably the best pairing up until today that I've ever had, and that really opened my eyes. It's a bigger, bolder style of Chardonnay, and it had the legs to actually stand up to the bold flavors of the steak as well. So that opened my eyes, and that threw all the rules that you learn in the book out. And that was when I just started. I'm lucky to have had that pairing when I just started, so that I won't be bogged down by books. Yes, exactly. So that for me was one of the best pairings.
I think for me, so that's your one.
Yes,
The other one is two.
Yes.
So I think for me, it would be probably two years back, just before the old world. And then my brother and I, he bought a new smaller boat. So like it's tradition on a boat, when you get a boat, you crack the champagne and you drink the champagne. So he had just got the new boat, and the weather's pretty bad, so we couldn't go out fishing. So what we had done was we had launched in Simonstown, and we had run the new little boat to Cork Bay, and there was nothing to be caught. So we had gone into Cork Bay. I jumped off the boat, went to Corky's, Corky's fish and chips. So I got us two fish and chip parcels, one hake, one snook, both the chips, and then I had taken with, obviously because it's Salsify, I mean, we have, so I had taken with a ice cold bottle of Charles Fox Cypher. It was a 2015, and it's my favorite bubbly. And we had gone just outside Cork Bay Harbour, and we had fish and chips with Charles Fox Cypher, and the pairing was perfect. Absolutely, I promise you.
Did you take glasses with?
No, straight on the bottle.
That is a terrific. I love Charles Fox. I love the wine that they do out in Elgin, and that Cypher's particularly good with fish and chips. I think that's splendid. It reminds me of one ad. I see Ronaldo, our producer, Overmere and Flings is also a winner. This is why Ronaldo is not allowed to do wine tastings ever. But I do remember the night before I got married, opening a bottle of 15-year-old Bordeaux. It wasn't quite a first growth, but it wasn't far off. And together with one of my groomsmen who was staying with me in my then apartment in Cape Town, we drank a bottle of fine and rather expensive Bordeaux with a pair of King Steers burgers from Steer. That was a very, very good dinner. It's a wonderful note on which to wrap up. It's been a splendid conversation. I could have it for far, far, far longer. I suspect that Nicky's story of trying to inflate a duck at his local petrol station might be the highlight, but some great food combinations, some great advice for all of us who are aspiring food and wine pairers at home. And also a reminder that all three establishments, Kayla and Rene out at Delaire Graff, whether it's the main restaurant or Indochine, Nikki and Victor with their menu at Tang and the Asian fare they have, or Ryan and Sam with that gem menu down at Salsify that really is quite exceptional. Collectively, just such a wonderful illustration of food and wine shining in South Africa. So guys, to all of you, thank you. It's been lovely having you on. I look forward to being back with all of you in person soon. And for now, Ryan and Sam, you've got food to pair. Kaylee, you've got some cooking to do. Renee, some wine to sort out. And Nikki, I'm sure there's a duck that needs a little inflating. So guys, thank you. It's been lovely having you on the show. Have a great evening and look forward to having you back on again soon.
Cheers, man.
Bye, Renee.
Collectively from Delaire Graff, from Tang, and from Salsify. Lovely food, but for the purposes of this evening, more importantly, lovely people with a great understanding and knowledge of food and wine, and some terrific stories as well. And that really is what Dan Really Likes Wine is all about. Congratulations once again to Esmeralda September. You are off to Bartony for a couple of nights. Well done. What a lovely message. Wants to share with her loved one at the wine estate at Bartony. Would be the best birthday gift. So congratulations, Esmeralda. We will be in touch soon, and look out for our new competition that kicks off this week. And that comes to you from our friends at Bellingham. I'll be back on Monday. Look out for the Pinotage Youth Development Academy. And how's this for a lineup for next Thursday? Samantha Sutton's Vine Venom range, getting lots and lots of interest. We also have Lucas van Lochenberg with his new Breaker Leg wines, and Saki Mouton, the crayfish, has its revenge. He'll be joining us next Thursday as well. It's a busy week for Dan Really Likes Wine. Also look out for some wine drinking in Mozambique. I'll be in Maputo next week and trying to pair fiery Portuguese food with some Portuguese wine. What will happen? You'll find out next week. Thanks again to our guests. You've been watching Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. Look forward to having you all back again live on Monday. Take care and keep drinking South African wine with great South African food. Cheers. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.